Welcome to Data War.
Welcome everybody for another episode of Data Wars podcast, where we bring thought leaders to talk about cloud, data, and AI topics. So today, I'm super thrilled to have Jeremy de Freitas. Jeremy, I got that name right, hopefully this time. Uh,
That's it.
I'm super excited to have you here. And Yash and I are really looking forward to talking to you because we have been having some conversations about AI and all the things around customer experience. And you are a PIM expert from that's where I know you from. I'm really, really excited to talk to you about all the things that are happening in the world of AI and PIM and agentic and stuff. So can't wait to dive down. Ash, what do you think?
Now, welcome, Jeremy. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today. And I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and what got me curious was, the first thing I want to ask you is talk about your journey. Uh, what you do today at Infoverity, how you got here, what got you into sort of this area. I'm sure the audience would love to hear sort of a journey getting here.
Sure. So maybe I can divide it into kind of three chapters. And so chapter one was back in 2011. I actually got my first real job with Hyler. They were a startup based out of Germany who was starting the North American division here. And so my job was essentially on the sales team. And Hyler was a specialty product specifically for product information management. So for those that don't know, in the same way that there's an assembly line for the physical products that retailers and distributors sell, there's also an assembly line for the product information around that. So PIM is really a software to streamline gathering all the information around a product. So that way, when you see it online, you see the product page, maybe on a website, on a mobile app, in a print flyer, wherever that might be. We help essentially assemble and curate and make sure all that information is complete and accurate to later on convert that sale because the customer's made, an informed decision. So I started off there with that proprietary software, and then we were, of course, later on acquired by Informatica. So by osmosis, I was essentially entered into the world of broader data management. So that I like to call it the trifecta of management of data management at the time. So it would be product information management, customer information management, as well as supplier information management. So that in itself was kind of a whole a world to get involved in. Learn the broader data management needs and the importance to corporations. And then after that, I've actually moved to Infoverity. So of course, Informatica being the software side, Infoverity was one of the top partners for Informatica and still is. So help implementing those solutions. So I got to see both sides of the things as well as the service side of things. So now I work on the sales and marketing side for Prodevix, the software division of Infoverity.
That's very interesting, Jeremy. You started your career with PIM, product information management, and the supplier. Remember around that time, the whole supplier category was blowing up because there's no solution in the market to manage suppliers, and product management was a big one. I think the whole thing started customer, and people realized that the product also needs to be managed. How did you get into your existing role in Infoverity?
So I had worked with Infoverity over the course of my, 12-ish tenure at Informatica and Hyler collectively. So I had worked on joint deals, throughout. It would have been primarily PIM at the time. But of course, tangentially, you get involved with these other sales cycles. So Infoverity essentially supports Informatica in every suite of their products. So I had worked with them for about 10 years. And then one of the Infoverity folks said, hey, we have an opening. And so essentially I had switched over to there. And again, we had a bit of a relationship already. So it was a pretty easy fit.
No, that's amazing. So, one thing when you were talking about Infoverity got me curious was how has the foray into AI been for you personally and, for you leading Infoverity as account executive?
I think AI is the next chapter of what we used to call workflow, right? So it's great. We used to have this intelligent engine that would start delegating tasks to people. And that seemed like a huge upgrade from spreadsheets and all that stuff. And now AI is coming in and becoming not only the person to delegate the task, but it's the person to consume more and more of these tasks that people would have to do manually. And I think in the world of product information, probably the most time-consuming piece is going to be around just curating the data and product description. So it's kind of a very practical and very simple use case, but somebody had to somewhere look at some pictures of a coffee mug, of a bike, of a tent, of a couch, and say, hey, this is the most attractive description. So that way a customer can kind of know what the value is of this product, what's it going to look like, size, dimensions. And now using AI, a lot of that can get automated. Great. Let's fast forward to you say, I'm going to use AI for this description. Great. Well, should you alter that description based on a customer? Should you alter that description based on the season? Should you base it on maybe the holiday season, a Black Friday sale? So now we're seeing people creating these contextual descriptions, contextual marketing information that, again, if you were to handle it manually, now your job has exploded. And if you can use AI, you can capture more of that contextual marketing copy and do it a lot faster.
Jeremy, it feels like to me, I think it's great some of these things are happening, but also for me, it feels like we are living in sort of this dual reality, right, with AI right now. Yep. On one hand, it's the hottest innovation of our decade, right? And we are not seeing anything like this. And then companies are racing to adopt it. There are investors who are pouring money into it. I mean, we're talking about 9-figure salaries when Meta talks about building a super intelligence team. And employees are curious about it, right, as to what they can do with AI. But on the other hand, there is this real sort of undercurrent of hesitation, if you will, right? Yeah. Customers worry about trust and bias and transparency. And even within the organizations, you will hear people say, oh, let's wait and see, right? Yeah. It's almost like AI is both exciting and it also sometimes intimidating at the same time, right? So sure. I'm curious, how do you see the current state of AI adoption? Is this... the big question for me is this a natural resistance just as a speed bump that we see in any technology adoption, or is there a deeper signal about how the market really feels about AI in general?
Well, if maybe I could break it down to kind of two chunks. Do people generally trust AI as a technology to do what it is that they want to do? And also, do they trust it to not replace them in the very near future? So there is this balance where people want to take it and use it efficiently, but of course, everyone's worried about their jobs being on the chopping block with something like this because it is going to be a huge shift. Yeah. I think there is just one element that it can't replace yet, and I use this in very big quotes, is just the element of care. I want to know that, do you care about me? And as soon as you put AI into the mix, it loses something. It loses some element of care about the customer, or that I would take the time and the effort to make sure that I'm, serving the customer that they want to be, the way they want to be served. And then once that's replaced by some, an AI engine, regardless of how perfect that interaction or engagement or, marketing strategy might look, something feels lost if the customers kind of detect that there's this AI involvement. So I guess it's trying to, how do we square that circle of using the AI efficiently while maintaining human connection? And I don't know if we're able to strike that balance just yet. And also, I don't think that we've necessarily crossed that point yet where, we've abandoned all efforts and hopes and innovations to maintain that human connection.
To be honest, I mean, that's one area where I personally struggled in this the idea of human connection, right? So because on my day-to-day job, I use AI quite a bit then compared to even 6 or 8 months ago or a year ago, right? It's almost become sort of that second nature to go to a GPT interface and start ideating, creating. I mean, I'm in the marketing too, so it makes a natural sense for me to ideate creative ideas. Whether it's marketing, customer service, or building brand loyalty, organizations just using it a lot now, right? And at the same time, the authenticity is critical in our communication. So AI is getting better at personalization. In fact, one specific change I have seen is how, just take an example of ChatGPT or OpenAI model, right? How it can now remember the context in which you are asking and the background history of all the queries you've done in the past, and remembering who you are and what your persona is like, and what are the jobs you do, what are the peoples what kind of questions you ask, and then using sort of that empathy empathetic angle of you,
Yeah.
for an empathetic person, that is, right? And then using that same voice and tone to tell you ideas, right? I think that's interesting, right? Do you think that AI will, in that context, I think my bigger question is, do you think AI will eventually truly replace human element, and bring that extreme connection required, because it's getting better, as I mean, it's not the same GPT I used to use 2 years ago or 1 year ago even, right?
Yeah.
So curious,
Sure.
what's your thoughts on that?
Well, this almost feels like the Turing test 2.0, where it's like, hey, at what point will we be able to have a conversation with something and not be able to tell that it's AI? I think
Yeah,
most of my reactions, I think there's some telltale signs that it is AI. So it hasn't quite crossed that. Maybe it's the same for you guys. I don't know if you feel like you could. There's still some elements like a flavor of AI in the
yeah,
responses that we get back,
100%. Yeah,
because they're a little bit. But then again, ironically enough, you can use AI to say, okay, dial it back and make it a little bit more human quality, and it'll do that. So it's kind of this weird catch 22. But I guess trying to keep the human connection in there. Again, I don't know if AI can necessarily replace that element of care. However, here's maybe a good kind of story to kind of walk through.
hmm,
Do you think AI removed that level of human care and effort when somebody says, and I just had this conversation just before hopping on here, is a good friend of mine, she's a wedding officiant, okay? And so her responsibility is to go through and curate the speeches that her the bride and groom might be having, and of course create some sort of individualized speech as the officiant and all that stuff. And we were talking about AI, and what if AI were to write your vows, would you really care? And she goes, well, that's not really a fair fight, because some people are more articulate, some people are great with words, some people remember all the small things that would make for a great speech, some people who may not just have that innate talent. What's wrong with them getting a few training wheels using AI and saying, hey,
hmm,
listen, this is what I'm trying to do, blah, blah, blah. I'm not super articulate, but I'm looking for some ideas to go on. What happens when AI provides you essentially a menu of things that you can then choose from and say, I like this, I don't like that, I like this, I don't like that.
yeah,
So that idea of, let's say, having AI create the bulk of the ideas and generate whatever those menu of options might be, then there's some human involvement deciding, okay, let me pick and choose which elements I like. I don't have the answer, but at what point does it stop being strictly AI efficiency and saying, hey, listen, I just need some training wheels to help me do the rest, right?
Yeah.
And I think as the human, you have to kind of decide for yourself, like, hey, what amount of effort do I want to put into this, and where does that line between training wheels and taking over my life end?
Do
love it.
you use AI for work in day to day?
Sure. I think especially I probably use it more in my personal life than I do for my actual work. Maybe again, I'll say, hey, can you proofread this, summarize this? Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I still don't think it quite dials in exactly what it is I want. So again, from my personal opinion, it'll get me, let's say, halfway there between that and the final product for sure. And that's a very general percentage, but
Um, the most common use cases, you mentioned like paraphrasing, um, coming up with creative infusion. You might have some loose guidelines, and then it helps you sort of come up with more ideas, helps you brainstorm. Have you used AI as a personal assistant? Is your search engine page ChatGPT or Perplexity versus Google, or are you still kind of using Google on a day-to-day basis?
I'm actually, maybe I'll answer your question with a question. I'm curious. Things are busy. Everyone's busy. Life is busy. Things are crazy. You got a million things on your plate.
Yeah.
I will type in all the things I have to do, the rough deadlines, all these elements, and say, help me prioritize. So
Nice.
absolutely, I've used it for prioritization and then help scheduling. And so in this weird way, it's kind of weird to be like, okay, you tell me what to do, computer, because you could probably optimize my schedule for that.
Yeah,
And there's
because
this element of, am I relinquishing control over my life to a machine who's just designed for efficiency?
Yeah.
And
if
the other
you're
part of me
being
is like,
honest, right?
great. Think of how
Yeah,
efficient I'm being, right? So
yeah. I mean, if you are being honest, right, there's definitely a trade-off, right?
sure.
AI might bring speed, consistency, and cost efficiency and all those things, but when you take people out of this equation, you risk losing that nuance, right? The
So
intuition,
true.
the sometimes even the trust, of how you have a conversation. For example, a chatbot might solve a problem very quickly because there's speed element to it, right? There's no human involved, so
Yeah.
natural tendencies of human to be slower, and some people are fast, but I'm not arguing that. But generally, a machine can definitely be much faster in that context. But it is the challenge. So one example of that I can talk about is a friend of mine is going through a tough time right now, right?
Mhm.
And for me to like have a conversation where I'm helpful to that person is really the human element of it, which you simply can't replace with AI, right?
Mhm.
However, if I want to have a motivational or have him think about the right way of what the future is, and help him get out of the problem, I can definitely go to AI and get some
Mhm.
tips
Yeah.
as to how I shape my conversation so I can
Mhm.
help him better than just naturally what I would do, right? So there is
Mhm.
that element of it. I think that's where a lot of trade-off is going to be. So how do you want to automate things you can automate and bring that efficiency and speed with AI while also preserving the natural tendencies of humans, which is always being empathetic and nice, and knowing the context. I mean, I will have that conversation with him and then quickly I have to switch to an office or work mode where I need
Yeah.
to drive and be more
Mhm.
outcome focused versus empathetic,
Yes,
right? So that's an
for sure.
interesting sort of trade-off. Yeah.
Jeremy, you're also a musician. I see a lot of AI innovation going in the musical space. Have you seen any cool tools which you think, oh, you know what, this will be a great teacher for students, or perhaps you could use that for kind of, because there's a lot of AI music. I was at Cloud Next, and I saw they had created, there's a few booths actually which were dedicated to AI music over there. And what's
Mhm.
your thought about that?
So I don't necessarily have a problem even with AI generating a top hit in the style of XYZ. I personally, this is feels like I'm the taxi driver complaining about Uber. I can't stop this tsunami of technological advancement. I
Sure.
would say there's some nuance here. What does music mean to you? Does it mean just going out and dancing and singing along and doing all that stuff? No problem. But some people use music as an emotional release, and what they're really looking for is that human feeling, that human connection, that sense of humanity, um, and all the different emotions that music brings. And so a lot of people that I talk to listen to music for the lyrics, and they can feel that
Mm.
sense of emotion. So in some cases, why is the world not big enough for an AI music and then human music?
Mm.
I think sometimes about, is this, sure, it's great. I could probably get it to write one of my favorite songs, but
Right.
again, something is lost there. So I might get something that I want, that fulfilling out of the AI side of music, and then, but also go to the human side for the other parts that, people generally want music for. Um, and there was actually going back to kind of the training wheels. Where is that line between, AI and, human artistic creation? And
Yeah.
so it was actually Billy Corgan, of Smashing Pumpkins. He was talking about, he's like, hey, well, what's the difference between, Prash, let's say you're my guitar player and you come to me with a bunch of different guitar riffs. You say, hey, which one would you like to work on and turn into a song? Well, at that point, I might just say, I like this one. I don't like that one. Oh, there's something to that one. And I go through and essentially choose which ones I like. Now, if Prash is an AI engine saying, hey, here's a couple riffs, here's a couple ideas, and I'm again curating and editing what options he's provided me for a song to work on,
Mm.
is that AI? Is that human
Yeah.
creation? And again,
Right.
it's not necessarily having the answer, but the question is, where is that line? And I think it requires some nuance.
I think I
Mm.
keep coming back to this idea of balance, right? The companies that succeed won't be the ones that go all in on AI or cling
Sure.
to all human models. Like there's no this way or this way is the only way to go, right?
That's right.
But the
Yeah.
ones the companies that figure out how to blend the two, right? Just in the humans case, like the companies who are trying to do this, the one that know how to blend the two are likely to succeed, in my view, because that
Yeah.
is a perfect combination which
Mhm.
brings efficiency on one side through AI, automation through AI, and
Mhm.
then also blends the human and empathetic side of it. So I think that's probably is the way to go. And then if you contextualize this, maybe Jeremy, you can help here. in your view, what does that right balance look like, right? So if you apply that to, for example, business again, like we are in the business of data management, we're in the business of PIM, product information
Yep.
management. How do we combine sort of AI based efficiency, like for example translation, right, of product data
Yep.
or product information? Like if you want to create a product and launch the market, it's a painful task for companies, right? It's a
Yeah.
known fact,
Yep.
because there's so many parameters in cloud. Just take a translation as an example. If you're doing business in multiple different countries, if you're in Europe,
Yeah.
you probably have to sell in French in France in French.
Mhm.
You have to sell in Germany in German. If you have to sell in Italy in Italian,
Mhm.
and the product information you put together has to naturally translate into those languages, and
Mhm.
AI can play a huge role in that. At
Yeah.
the same time, it may not sometimes do the right translation, leading to a not so good, reaction from customer base that you're trying to target. So, I'm curious what you think about that kind of balance in a business setting.
Well, I think that's again where you can cut this up into a million different scenarios, right? So one
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
is, hey, I'm introducing this brand new, I keep using coffee mugs because I'm drinking a coffee mug, a brand new coffee
Mm-hmm.
mug, right? People get it. They understand what it's about. It's a simple kind of idea. You can mass produce them. You can buy them online, easy to ship, package, the whole bit. Whereas, let's say, we've talked about this before, it's the brand new latest line of, let's say, a luxury purse or handbag at Louis Vuitton.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's the better marketing strategy for them? It is a invite only, in-person red carpet event at their new flagship store. It's going to have that personal element. So my prediction, for what it's worth, is that those type of in-person invite only events, a human holding your hand and walking you through the value of their particular item, is going to become a luxury experience. Because guess what? It's going to be the most expensive thing you could offer. You could sure have an AI bot bring you in there, but that's pretty cheap compared to actually getting a human in there who cares enough to walk you through. And so I can see, down the line, a woman coming back from the latest Louis Vuitton store. This is, in 2050 or whatever, saying, hey, did you know if you go into Louis Vuitton, there's a real person there. They walk you through all the aisles and they'll show you every purse. They'll show you the stitching. They'll show you, ask what your favorite colors are or whatever. And that will be kind of a novelty experience because everyone else will have adopted this kind of mass produced customer interaction. And so it reminds me of this funny meme on the internet. It was kind of a top half and a bottom half. And the top half was like back in the 90s where you get a piece of regular mail, snail mail, and then you get an email and you're like, yay, I get an email. And now it's like, hey, if you get an email, you're like, whatever, you're still sad and depressed. And then, but if you get a piece of physical mail, now you're like, yay. And there's something to be said for what is the most infrequent and most surprising interaction you can have. That is what has more weight.
Yeah.
And so when these companies are looking at it, it's how do I show that I care more than the other guy? And I think however that shakes down in terms of the balance between AI and human, which one shows that I care more, that one will win.
I think your point is then sort of put the customer at the center of your equation and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
play to the emotion of that, then looking at the one way or the other way.
For sure.
I
And by
love
the
that
way,
aspect of it.
and there's no way to do that. I would actually commit to the idea that there's zero way to do that without the right data management and being able to know your customer, at least on
100%.
some level, right? So it's not as if it's one or the other. It's like, hey, just how much AI before we add in a dash of human, right?
I think there's two concepts here, right, Jeremy? One is when we talk about music, it's about making things frictionless for people, which is what Amazon focusing on. How do you reduce friction in a transaction? When we do business with our clients, how do we reduce friction? And how do our customers feel? If you're a listener of music, how do I feel when I consume that music, whether it's done by AI or if I'm not musically gifted, I can still express myself now with AI, get the lyrics out, get the music, and that might touch people. So end of the day, it's about kind of as an experience, it's about less friction. That's one side of the equation. And the
Absolutely.
second thing you touched on was there's always going to be that crowd which likes the status, which is ego driven, and which wants that human touch, to feel special for that reason.
Mhm.
So when you're going after the masses, the idea would be how do we kind of reduce friction? And I think that's where AI will do a
Right.
great job in personalization and removing friction. And Prash, to your point, as translation kicks in, there'll be mistakes made, but as time goes on, they'll fix it, and slowly they'll try to remove all of the friction using AI.
Yeah.
When it comes to especially high ticket items, we'll definitely see the human intervention, because it's a launch event. Let's say you will have humans there, but I think companies will lean more and more towards this frictionless experience because it's easy for them to make money.
Yeah.
So I could do a launch event, have a human walk other humans through different aisles, but then I will have a surreal online experience where blink your eyes twice and you buy something. So,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Patent pending, right? That's good.
Or use the voice, right? I mean, there are instances of people
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
have, the kids have called Amazon or Alexa and ordered the stuff around. So interesting. So that actually leads into an interesting topic, which I'm curious about, your point of view on AI regulations, right? As
Sure.
AI becomes sort of the mainstream, regulation feels like an inevitable thing. There's no escaping that, right? The governments are already stepping in,
Mhm.
and companies themselves are putting some guardrails as well. I mean, in our case, we are doing some of that too. So, what's fascinating is that this actually might create an entire new market for
Right.
that matter, right? The peripheral markets, which always emerge when you talk about a big movement like this in AI, and how compliance, monitoring, even fencing off some of the AI models so they don't do any ethical, non-ethical, or is it the right word?
Unethical, yeah.
Unethical or
Yeah.
illegal lines that it
Yeah.
crosses, right? So, I'm curious, what type of regulation do you think that we will see in the few years, and do you see that will spark sort of that secondary market we're talking about, of just companies built to address AI regulatory issues?
Sure. I mean, it's a very big question. I think,
I know it is.
um, and the scary part is
Yeah.
sometimes we do trade off the
Mhm.
convenience, and being known, and being recommended the right products and stuff like that for our privacy. I think a lot of times when's the last time somebody read a privacy policy? But at the
Yeah.
same time, if people want to have that transparency and say here's how my data is being used, and I think of course there's going to be invested interest in these companies making sure, hey, if I'm going to have not only just in terms of regulatory provisions, as well as ethical use of the data, it's also to make sure that it's accurate and we're actually using it. So that's going to require fencing off data, either from a legal perspective or just from a performance perspective, right? We want to make sure that we're using the best data with the right guardrails, so it's not taking into account the entire universe of data and then getting a biased result or inaccurate
Mhm.
information. I don't know what that looks like, though. Outside of the regulations themselves, and this may be a question to you guys, is do you think that AI is too far gone for them to start implementing some of these rules, or has enough of the cat gotten out of the bag where now imposing a regulation is going to be pretty difficult or hard to kind of go back, and retrofit AI's emergence with these guardrails?
Yeah.
I think my
I
take
think
on that
the
is,
yeah.
it's a good
Go ahead.
point, but I think we've seen this in the past as well with regulation, that when governments want, there are many, many ways for things to be regulated, right? Fines are there, which definitely gets people's attention. Uh, so even though they might be late to the scene, we might definitely have bad actors, which you can't control.
Right.
But most of the big companies will have to comply with sort of the regulation which comes out. And I think a lot will be around privacy.
Mhm.
Excuse me. Um, and the stuff we're talking about, from a business perspective, when I talk about more frictionless, regulation is sort of adding more friction to the process, and that's
Right.
always the case. I got to fill one more form, one more check. That to the example I was talking about, you use your voice or you blink your eyes. Regulation would say no, you require a click, right?
Right. Right.
You never know these things. Like I was reading the news just 2 days ago. uh, India banned all online gaming websites from doing any financial transactions. So big
Interesting.
companies just became bankrupt in a matter of days. They just can't operate in that environment anymore. So when something like this, like, that's a huge regulation, and these are companies that exist in that space, and they decide to shut everybody down, and we're talking about billions of dollars just gone. Um, and people need to prepare for that. Probably lobbying has to be done, I think, in that aspect. Um, what do you think, Prash?
Yeah, I think just one point I'll add to that is we can't over pivot this way or the other way. I think we need to be very mindful and cautious about how much. If you look at just the amount of regulations we want to bring into this, we got to be really cautious about that, because the last thing you want to do is you have an amazing tool in front of you, and the last thing you want is not to make people use it anymore because you are
Yeah.
heavily
Mhm.
concerned. So the case in point, I think this was happened a couple of years ago when I think it was Tesla, which got in an accident or whatever when it was self-driving. Maybe a year ago, it was not even 2 years ago. So immediate reaction to something like that happens is, oh, we need to put regulations around self-driving now, right?
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and to pivot to a point where you don't even make innovation go faster anymore because you are not allowing people to test it anymore. How do we correct the problem that we have, kind of approach, right? However, if you look at the other way around, still, if you look at the number of accidents that are happening through self-driving cars relative to a human mistake, like there's no sky, there's like sky and earth, right? So still human mistakes are leading to
Mhm.
a lot more accidents, right? So if you look at that equation, you actually want to promote the idea of self-driving more and more.
Right.
Only thing is you need to fix the problems that occurred and help correct them. So
Yeah.
I think that's where the balance is, and it's a very interesting topic. I know it's evolving topic. Jeremy, as we get to the closure side of it, I have
Yeah.
more curious of your current work
Sure.
at Infoverity and other places. Like I think you talked briefly about some of the grocery areas, like how
Yeah.
you're helping improve customer experience, sort of inventory management,
Sure. Yeah.
even the personalization, which was not practical before. So I'm curious about your work and how does that sort of translate into benefit for companies that we are working with.
Sure. I mean, I think it's very interesting to live in a time where AI is taking over and there's so much advancement happening. But if you really keep an ear to the ground, there are still so many industries that are operating on pen and paper. There are still so many little divots in the industry where people have managed to stay under the radar of AI. And of course, I think slowly that's gonna be overtaken with digitizing
Mhm.
processes and all that stuff. But you're asking about grocery. Grocery is one of those little cracks. And so in grocery, if I'm a grocery retailer, I have to spend hours and hours comparing the pretty ugly price sheets from all the different vendors bidding for bananas, avocados, the whole bit. And so every week I've got to put together my price list of, supplier ABC wins, for bananas our banana order this week, another one with our avocados, and I have to go through and compare these sometimes physical sheets that are literally
Mhm.
updated with handwritten notes of what the price is this week versus others. So at Prodevix, we've developed an engine that essentially auto reads these files, automatically puts them into a structured template. So that way your store manager, and here's where the human comes in, can come in and actually compare these literally apples to apples and say, okay, this is the best deal. But also factoring things like quality, shipping times, lead times, product discounts, volume discounts, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
It could be even something as the square footage of the store and how much of this product they can actually buy. And so along with that, let's fast forward and say, great, now I've got my orders for this week. Everyone just handed me their data, put it into our magic mechanism here, spat out their order. Well, great. Now I've bought it as the retailer, but how do I sell it? And so, along with collecting that data, being able to compare apples to apples pricing, can we auto generate descriptions based on the brand voice that would then go to the POS, that would then go to the mobile app, the flyer, and then continually get updated? Because maybe you are this week buying, I don't know, oranges from California versus, let's say, Florida, right? So you might want to update the one that's for sale in the flyer kind of thing. So it's really, again, that assembly line of product information. This time we can use it for produce, seafood, deli, anything where suppliers are now continuing to provide these data in these very messy PDFs, Excel files, emails, handwritten notes, believe it or not. And then be able to compare those apples to apples, and then also prepare that data to be sold online. So enabling the mobile cart functionality, a lot of these smaller players as well. So that's kind of been our MO over the last couple of years.
I absolutely love that
That's
scenario
amazing.
because that can benefit so many grocers, and it's amazing. I mean, and most importantly, customers like me and you who buy from these stores. So
Absolutely.
I think that's an amazing story. So I have one request for you,
Sure.
and I
Sure.
think you will see. You probably saw this coming.
Okay.
Knowing your music love and the love for data management, do
Okay.
you have any ditty created for us, or is that just
Oh,
a
geez. I
random?
don't know if
I'm
I
curious.
don't have anything yet, but maybe you'll have to get me back in the studio for another one.
Oh
I
man. Okay.
should have thought about it ahead of time, but
Oh, next
never
time
say
probably.
never.
For the audience who don't know this, Jeremy and I worked at Informatica. This was a couple of years ago, and we put together such an amazing a song together, which explains the importance of product information management. That was probably one of my best memories of you and me
Oh,
working
thank you very
together.
much.
I can, I absolutely. Maybe we'll put that link in the show notes here for people to listen to it. I think it's out there on the internet, actually, on the YouTube
Oh,
or somewhere.
that would be awesome. Yeah, that sounds good. I still have yet to start my album here at Infoverity, but maybe this is my perfect starting point. So.
There you go. That's awesome. Ash, any other last questions before we close?
No questions, Jeremy. I just want to thank you for the insightful conversation, and it was fun, man. It was really fun, kind of learning about sort of what you do and how it has been used in the day to day of the work you do. So thank you again so much for the time you gave us today, and hopefully next time when we have you, you can have something play for us.
Sounds good. No, it's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks so much for having me on.
We gotta do it one more time. So there you
Let's
have
do
it,
it. All
folks.
right.
Another episode of Data Wars podcast, where Jeremy was such an awesome guy. So thank you, Jeremy, for a great show, and we'll look forward to bringing another episode like this in the near future for all of you guys. Thank you
Just
for
before we
joining
let
us.
Jeremy go, Prash,
Yeah.
if people want to get in touch with you, Jeremy, if you want to quickly
Oh yeah.
let them know what's the best way to get in touch with you.
Sure. If you want, you can always visit infoverity.com. And of course, you can learn about what our company does in terms of the data management, space. Everything around, I like to say we collect, redirect, and perfect information in really any context. But if you'd like to follow me as a musician, I'm at JD Plays Music on Instagram. So for business or pleasure, I'm available.
I gotta myself follow you. So thanks,
Awesome.
Jeremy, for that. So there you have it, guys. One more episode of Awesome Data Wars podcast. So I'll see you around for next time.
All right, guys.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Awesome. Pleasure, gentlemen. Thanks so much.